I want to get the view from Changhua and later John on what you believe or what you understand is the reason behind the collective underperformance for the Aichi targets, and whether that lesson has been learned for the latest target set in the Kunming-Montreal effort. Changhua first.
Well, besides what Terry has just said, if you go deeper into the landscape in terms of collective underperformance, as the word you used, basically, yeah, we set all those 20 targets, but if you look at them, probably they are not really thought through in a sort of systematic manner, because nature by diversity is a system, it's an ecosystem, right? And so we put some isolated numbers there. That's one thing. The second thing, actually, we set a lot of aspiring targets, not adequately in terms of quantitative targets. There are only a few quantitative targets. For instance, we said by 2020, we need to have at least 17% of land and inland waters actually put under protected areas there, and 10% of the coastal areas there as well. So then if you look at the realities, really amazingly, some efforts have been made, really put against those quantitative targets there. So that's another sort of lessons learned as well. And also, I think very important that I do want to re-emphasize the importance of means-aim implementation, meaning, yeah, this is a global convention and the global framework. We said so many things we want to commit to achieve, but I think that's very important, and the lessons learned. And very importantly, we started to put serious means of implementation in the new in the action plan. And so I think all put together, that offers more hopeful sort of prospect in terms of we're going to making more substantial progress rather than underperforming.
John, what's your take on whether the new framework is more doable, is more implementable, and will win more financial support? And is that being supported by 2 years of time that we've had, less than 2 years, but has there been progress in terms of implementation, in terms of action, according to the framework?
Thanks, and yeah, we actually had a 2010 target for biodiversity. We didn't reach it. We didn't reach the 2020 Aichi targets. It's a question of will it be third time lucky? What's gone wrong? Well, what's gone
third time failure.
Third time lucky, third time failure. We're all hoping it's third time lucky. But the issue is here, the Convention on Biological Diversity, including through its negotiations, has traditionally brought together the conservation community. And the conservation community amongst itself has determined what needs to be done if we're going to, stop biodiversity loss. Now, the problem was they weren't engaging with nor finding any way to influence those actors that were causing the biodiversity loss. So basically, they were talking amongst themselves, coming up with a good plan, but with really no sense of how that was going to actually be implemented by those people who are having a negative impact on biodiversity. Now, I think it's better this time round. I think in terms of the adoption of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, there was much deeper engagement across different sectors, but I would say it was still quite light on. I think perhaps the positive thing that came out of the process in Kunming and Montreal was that we did see much more attention to financing. Now, there was a lot of talk about financing in Nagoya in 2010. I was there. I listened to it. I participated in it. This time, I think we are seeing a little bit more traction. China created a fund The Global Environment Facility created a fund. We saw more pledges. But we've seen a lot of pledges in the past. What we need to see is whether or not these materialise. The other issue is how are these targets going to embed themselves into those sectors that are having the impact on biodiversity? How is that going to flow out? Now, the reference to mainstreaming is important, but I think we need to move away from some of the jargon. You know, governments have a lot of pressure on them. Governments are dealing with all manner of social, economic and environmental issues.
Right.
How do we address biodiversity loss in the context of the social and economic context within which we're operating? That's the big challenge.
Yeah.
Well, we're better placed this time than last time.
Well,
still a challenge.
Definitely. But I do think that we need to focus on the brighter spots among the collective underperformance, because that's where people probably see hope and inspiration. And I'm not being very modest here, because China did belong to one of the better performing ones. Just now, Changhua mentioned Target 11, which China excelled the target according to the Aichi plan, and China was one of the 40 countries out of the 196, that's 1/5 countries in the world that actually met the Aichi target. So Terry, I want you to probably speak from your personal perspective, experience here, because you're seasoned, you're a weathered bird watcher here in Beijing, and you have seen
So, for example, we've seen the creation of a national park system in China, which will be the biggest in the world by far by 2030. One of those, the first 5 national parks that was created, Sanjiangyuan on the Tibetan Plateau, is comparable to the size of England. And then in addition to that...
Meaning the sources of the 3 great rivers, the Yangtze, the Yellow, and the Mekong. The upper reaches of the Mekong, yeah.
So the creation of the national park system has been a huge way of raising the importance of biodiversity and celebrating China's most important biodiversity with the public, which I think is really important. And then in addition to that, you've had a whole range of strengthening of environmental laws. So when I first came to Beijing, for example, the air pollution, it was cheaper for companies to pay the fines than it was to buy the equipment needed to fix the pollution. So they would just pay the fines. Now the laws are changed so that those fines are cumulative and